Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. My name is Reagan and today we're going to be doing a 2-month long wrap up. Yes, you heard me right. About 20 books to go through because this is May and nope, this is April and May. That means we're going to rapid fire these because I do have 20 books to go through. Yes, 20 books to go through. Starting with April, there's 2 stacks here, one in the front and one in the back. We're going to go through both of them, obviously. First book I read in April was Miss Abby Jimenez's new release, The Night We Met. I rated this at 4.5 stars. Everyone hated this book. I kind of love it. If you don't know, this follows our FMC and our MMC, but our FMC is in another relationship. A lot of people had a lot of problems with this book and they were like, it felt icky, like all that kind of stuff. I didn't know if it made me feel icky as much as it made me feel anxious because I didn't want anyone to get hurt in this situation. I think that a lot of people didn't like this book because of like the trope kind of, but I think it's so much more than tropes because I feel like in real life, in relationships, sometimes things are complicated and they're not easy. And I think that it's so much deeper than like a forbidden romance per se. Like you've got yourself into this hard situation in which people can get hurt, but also Mike isn't innocent either. I think Abby Jimenez handled it with a lot of care. And I think as much as I felt anxious in every second while I was reading this book, I couldn't foresee a way for this book or this plot line to go any other direction. Like I don't think there was any other way she could have ended it that would have made any sense for the relationship, for the characters, for the continuation of this series. Mike is going to get a book. So it's not like he's the villain. He's like kind of left in this limbo of, oh, he just got his girl stolen. We're gonna get kind of answers there. And I think I like that about the series. Like I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt here. And I also just like this book. Like it made me feel emotions, and part of this trope and what happened in this plot line is feeling that anxiety, feeling like, how are these characters going to do this? Like, how is this going to play out? I think Abby Jimenez did a great job of taking us through that, making you feel those emotions for the characters. Like you felt, at least I did. I felt so anxious for them the entire time I was reading. And like, as much as that sucks to feel sometimes, it was the goal. Like that was the purpose of writing this, was to make you feel anxious, to make you feel like, how are these characters going to get together? Also, these characters were both deeply relatable. They both had personal issues going on that feel very real, as always in an Abby Jimenez book. And so I really enjoyed that as well. Honestly, I just can't wait for more content from Abby Jimenez. I feel like she's only grown and grown and grown as a writer. And while maybe this isn't like the book for you out of all of her backlist, I think it's still a good book. I think her writing style has developed and she was able to handle this with enough care that I felt like it did well. Like it was good. And so I'm excited to see where she goes with the rest of the series, with the rest of her books. I think I'll always pick up an Abby Jimenez book. Maybe they're not a literary masterpiece, but they're always fun and engaging and make you think and make you feel, which is what I like in a romance book, if it can make me feel something. And this made me feel anxious. That was not a rapid fire, but I did have a lot to say about that. So we're gonna keep it a little quicker. Next was At First Bite by Olivia Dade. This I had such high hopes for. This is a book that I bought when I went into a bookstore and then like just bought something based on vibes. Like I hadn't heard anything about this book, this author. I ended up rating this at 2.5 stars. This follows our FMC and our MMC, and our FMC is engaged to a man. She is engaged to a man. The engagement falls through. Why does the engagement fall through? The groom's brother was our MMC. He's like, whoa, dude, you cannot marry her. And so the engagement falls through. Come to find out that our FMC has actually bought a house. She's bought a house next to the MMC because that was her wedding present for the groom. She was going to buy this house next to his brother's house and they were going to live near each other. It was going to be all nice and cool. And she's like, what do I do? Sell the house? Or use it as a spite house? So she moves in. She does the petty thing, which I love her for. Messes with this man's life to no end. It actually was hilarious. She like played a spicy audiobook really loud for him to hear, and it got him into monster romance. And it honestly wasn't a bad book. 2.5 is half of 5. For me, that's like, yeah, that was good. Maybe not memorable, but it was a fun time. If it sounds like you like the concept, maybe pick it up. Then we have Willing Prey by Ali Oleander. This is a book my sister bought and then it dumped in my room and I said, sure, I'll read it. I rated this at 2.5 as well. So not amazing, but a really, really fun time, entertaining, not memorable, but not bad. When I wrote this review on Fable, it had literally been probably upwards of a month. I remember the basic plotline. I don't remember the characters' names, but like the FMC gets hired by the MMC. He knows her. She doesn't know that he knows her. Basically like some work thing. They like knew each other. He became obsessed with her. She had no idea who he was. So I love a man obsessed. He hires her to like get hunted in the woods because she's into that, and then they like do it because she's desperate for money, and then yeah, they just fall for each other. It was fun enough. Like I don't have any complaints per se, but like I don't know if this is my vibe. but I read it and it was fun. It definitely was bingeable. I read it in under 24 hours. Like I said, the one thing I did love about this book is the microtrope man obsessed. I love a man obsessed. He did everything in his power to get closer to her, even though she had no idea who he was. I like that. I like when he is not nonchalant. I like when he is very chalant. Game On by Nevesta Allen. I rated this 3 stars. I think if I reread it, it would be higher. And here's why. I binged this. I just think I read it too quickly to where when I came back to it to write this review, I was like, I actually don't remember anything about this book. I think I need to reread this. It's on my reread list because I really liked it when I was reading it. I remember that, but I don't remember anything about it. There's a guy, he ran a secret poker ring. He was trying to destroy the father of the girl that he was interested in to get, wait, I'm remembering things. Okay, wait. Our MMC is like the head of a secret poker ring. The FMC is a tattoo artist. And in order to get close to her, he goes to get a tattoo from her. And then he like kind of gets obsessed with her and her art and stuff. He wanted to get close to her because he's trying to destroy her father, who was like rich and famous and supposedly killed his dad. It didn't stick in my head because I had to read it on audio because I didn't have the physical copy because I was abroad. Considering all factors, it was good. And I think when I reread it, I will rate it higher. Next, we have Love by You by Alexandra Lachelle. This book I actually saw on a Audible sale because every month they have new like audiobook sales. And I remember seeing this on there and I was obsessed with the cover, so I bought it for like $2 or $3, something like that. And then I listened to it on a whim. The audiobook narrator was Midnight Michael. If you've never listened to Midnight Michael, I think that's his name. I'm gonna double check that. But if you've never listened to an audiobook with him in it, please do, because I was obsessed with his voice. Obsessed. I like this book enough to rate it a 4 stars. This is a second chance romance. Tell me why this is a second chance romance. I hate second chance romance, but I loved it. Yeah, so basically what I remember about this book, we have our 2 main characters. They are like college sweethearts. They know each other from college. They meet, they start dating. Something happens, as always. They reconnect in Houston. They're originally from New Orleans, went to college in New Orleans. Somehow they're both in Houston for work. They're like forced proximity a little bit. If you don't want to know anything, skip ahead. But trigger warning for miscarriage in this book, like big theme. Only complaint about this book, I felt like it was a little bit too long. Maybe there could have been some cuts, but like in general, a really good romance book. I love the 2 main characters, Zay and Nessa, and I'm really hoping we get another book for Khalil, who is a side character in this book, but he was really funny. Next, we have Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. I'm already reading the entire series with my friend Leah. Hate to break it to you, but I despised the second book in this series. Like 2-star rating for Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. The second book in the series is so bad. Could have been an email. Like biggest could have been an email I've ever read. And the only reason it got the 2nd star was because I love the characters already. One of my main complaints about this book is it followed the exact same plot structure as the first book, but it took so many liberties and like plot jumps to make it the same plot structure as the first book that I was like, we could have just done something different. It would have made it better. I feel like the characters were making decisions that are out of character for them and also out of pocket. Like it just felt like the decisions these characters were making were to further the plot and like kind of F everything up. But then I was like, but that decision is out of character. If they would do that normally, then sure, use it as a plot device. But if they wouldn't normally make that decision and then you make them make that decision in order to get a plot device out of it, it doesn't make sense because it's out of character for them. Luckily enough, I'm reading the 3rd book, so I'm giving it a redeeming chance. Like I actually am loving the 3rd book. I'm currently reading it right now. Next, we have this absolute monster, Releasing 10 by Chloe Walsh. One of the things about the Boys of Common books for me is I'm always like, when I'm in the story, I'm like, I can't put this down. I'm turning the page. But when I put the book down, it takes a lot for me to pick it back up. And I think it's low-key because they're so traumatizing. And honestly, the obsession with the characters and the plot comes after I finish the book, because I'll keep thinking about everything that happened in the book, but while I'm reading it, I'm like, I don't want to be here. If you don't know, The Boys of Tommen is a huge series of found family. At first, it follows Johnny and Shannon, Joey and Aoife, Claire and Gibbsy, and Lizzie and Huey. So there's a bunch of different couples that come in duets. Trigger warning, huge trigger warning before you go into any of these books. This book, a lot of people think it's too traumatizing, and I can see why people say that if this is like a triggering topic for you. And it is a triggering topic for a lot of people. However, I think it's important to read about things of this subject because it does happen to people. When I was reading this, I was deeply uncomfortable. I was disgusted. I felt icky. This happens to people in this book, in real life. Imagine how those people feel going through that thing when you're sitting there reading about it and you feel icky. It's important to read about experiences that are not our own because it teaches you empathy. Maybe it's not for everyone. Like, do not read it if it's something that triggers you, but I do think it's important to have represented in media. Don't mind Lizzie's character. I'm gonna be so honest. Justice for Lizzie a little bit, because yes, she can be really mean, but when you read this book, you're like, of course it makes sense. Like, the empathy that this book gives you for Lizzie in the other books in the series, it makes so much sense. Also, I forgot to say I rated this at 4.5 stars. Then I read another tome of a book, which I also rated 4.5 stars, and that is Tempest of Wrath and Vengeance by Melissa K. Rourke, the third book in the Legacy series. I actually adore this series, and I still adore it. This book was very good. Like, probably one of my favorites in the series. It probably was the first one, then this one, then the second one. I still have the fourth one to go. It's actually on my TBR this month. Not gonna lie, in the beginning of this book, it kind of dragged a little bit for me, but I understand why. When I get to the end, I'm like, okay, that made sense. And honestly, like, this book was really annoying, but again, it made sense for the larger series. And also, I love the characters so much that even if I'm annoyed with them, I'm still gonna have a fun time because I just love the world. I love the characters. Even though they piss me off, like, I'm still invested and I care about what's gonna happen to them. I think the thing that I loved the most about this book was finally we're starting to get some character growth, some character development that has been like much needed in the other two books of the series, because they are annoying. Like, these characters are actually annoying. The end was crazy. Like, I think we just got a lot of growth and a like plot twist, and I think it's just coming together to really wrap everything up in a tight little bow. Next we have Wild Card by Elsie Silver. This is the final book in the Rose Hill Ranch series, I believe. I gave this book a 3.5 stars. I absolutely devoured this one. It's a little bit of another one of those cases where I only kind of remember what went on because I devoured it so quickly, but I remember loving it. So what I remember about this book is we have a little age gap situation, and it is ex-boyfriend's dad. So we have our main female character. I'm pretty sure her name was Gwen, and she's like a yoga teacher instructor, and she really likes to like move around. She's not one that often stays in one place. And our MMC is like a firefighter, and he lives in Rose Hill Ranch. He's lived there forever, and he kind of recently found out that he has a son that he was never told about. Like, he was really young when that happened, and so his son is like old, like probably in his mid-20s, and our MMC is in like his mid-40s. So really like 20 years in between them. And then our FMC is like right in the middle. She's like 30, mid-30s. And so there's like a 10-year age gap. She dates the son, well, kind of dates the son. Gwen is like effing around with the son. Like, they're definitely not serious. And then he takes her to his family gathering, like a family function. And she's like, whoa. I did not know we were this serious. The son's dad, they had met first. So like, Gwen knew the dad before she knew the son. She didn't know that the son that she was effing around with, his dad was the same guy that she'd met before. All that to say, it's an ex-boyfriend's dad trope. Yep. There's another book that made me anxious because I was like, how are you gonna execute this? But also, the son was really an asshole, so I didn't really care about his feelings. But last book I read in April, We Who Will Die by Saskia Stark. I rated this at 3.5 stars as well. This book was honest to God infuriating, and I still rated it highly. I really felt like while we were going throughout this book, we were taking scenes from other popular romantasy, dystopian, all of those kinds of books, like 2014, like Hunger Games type vibe. I felt like we were taking aspects and scenes, like direct scenes from those books, not necessarily copying, but they were like eerily similar to all of those scenes. It's like we take elements from each one, and it felt like a conglomeration of all of them, but kind of like not intentionally, but kind of unintentionally. There was a murder side plot with trials that felt eerily similar to Throne of Glass. Like, the introduction scene to like the area they're staying in where they're touring, it felt eerily similar to Divergent. And then like the trials and the setup of the trials felt really similar to Hunger Games and ACOTAR. And I don't know, like, it just, I'm not saying that this is plagiarism. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it felt like we took a lot of popular romantasy tropes and scenes and meshed them all together, and I could feel that it was that. I also felt like the introduction was really stupid. Like, there was definitely a better way we could have gotten her into this trial situation than the way that we did it. And then also, this is an adult romantasy, and I have a really big gripe, not for the reason you might think, but I think a lot of romantasy, the world building is not strong enough to make it an adult. It doesn't feel adult except for the fact that they're having sex. That is the only thing that makes it an adult romantasy, versus like, if they weren't having sex like that, this could be a YA book and the world would fit in a YA genre because it's not so fleshed out. I feel like that's a problem I often have with modern romantasy books, because I'm like, this is objectively a young adult quality book just plus sex, and then I'm like, that doesn't make it adult. Just take the sex out and you would have had a really solid young adult. But the way that you describe this fantasy world, just because it's romantasy doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fleshed out enough for an adult to think it's like solid. A common thing in YA world building is you're just told that something is true and then you have to accept it. Like sometimes there's not as much reasoning behind the thing, or like we don't have an exact science to why something happens. It's just like we know it does. I feel like though in adult, the difference between YA fantasy and adult fantasy is we have the why. It's more complex. We understand kind of why this dynamic is the way it is in the world, versus a young adult, you're kind of just told something and you're meant to go with it. I feel like this book, you were just told things about the world and you're meant to just be like, okay, yeah, even though they don't really make sense. And if you think about it for like 2 seconds, you're like, that doesn't make sense. Another thing about the world building that really pissed me off about this book, our main character was presented as a character who's supposed to be really cunning, really good at politics. She's really able to work in the world in the situation that she's given because she's technically a thief. When we're getting like introduced to this trial situation that we have, in order to world build, all the other side characters essentially give her a crash course on how the world works, because she's asking these questions like, wait, what do you mean the vampires do this? And it's like, girl, you live in this world with the vampires and you steal from people, like, and you're presented as resourceful. We're told that you are smart and resourceful and know the politics of this world and play off them, and then you need a crash course on how the world works? That doesn't make sense. And I understand that it is for the viewer, like for the reader, in the sense that we need the world building. But if you're going to do that, you can't present her as someone who really deeply understands like the world that she's in, because she doesn't. Because you can't have her ask a question of like, wait, how does that work? When she's supposed to know. Like, you told us that she knew that. I feel like this book did everything half good. The only thing that was fully good was the MMC, which is why it got 3.5. A little bit better than just okay, because the man was carrying. The man was carrying, and you know what? I'm not ashamed to admit the only reason I finished this book is because I wanted to get more content on this man. He was the only redeeming character, the only redeeming plot point, the only redeeming event. Anything that was redeeming about this book had to do with our MMC, and he would be the only reason that I continue the series when the next book comes out. Reading this book made me viscerally angry, as you can probably tell. So that is all the books I read in the month of April. Now let's get into the month of May. We're going to start off with the first book I read, which was The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. I read this on the beach. Great experience. This is a series of short stories about the decay of passion in women, and this I had told myself, like, I'm going to read this in France. It's originally written in French in the south of France, and I was like, I'm going to read this. I rated this at 3.5 stars. I did break it down in my Fable review and tell you what each of the stories, like each individual story, I gave it kind of its own section of the review and then what I rated it each individually. But just generally, it was a really good collection of short stories. I enjoyed some more than others, and I really want to read this in French one day, because I think maybe, you know, that's always a great experience, is to read the book in its original language. So next book I read was Love Arranged by Lauren Asher. This is the final book in the Lakefront Billionaire series, and to be quite honest, every single one of these books in this series, they're hits. They're hits. Like, if you want a good book to read on the beach, pick up one of these. It's pretty chunky, but somehow it goes by so quick. I rated this 3 stars. I wouldn't say this is Lauren Asher's best book, but I would say it's her darkest. We had a lot of darker themes in this book. Side note, Lauren Asher, if you are listening to this, girlfriend, there was a particular side character in this book who's described as insanely buff and huge, but also a golden retriever, and I would please, please, please like a book for him. I believe his name is Manny. I could be mistaken on the name, but I would love a book for him if you may. In general, like, I liked this book. I liked the characters. I don't think they were my favorite, like, out of Lauren Asher's characters, so I feel like that's why I kind of just got a 3 star. Like, it was definitely better than meh, but it wasn't much better than meh. Like, I was like, this is a good book, and then I never thought about it again. It was like a little bit far-fetched, but it was also like arranged marriage, which, how do you not make that far-fetched? In my opinion, no one ever needs to have a fake marriage. Like, unless you were a celebrity, babes, that doesn't, like, really work. And he was a politician. I was even like, really, this isn't making sense. I just like the trope. Also, if you liked Lights Out by Navessa Allen, but you wanted, like, a tamer version, I think this is kind of good, because he's not a stalker, like, has stalkerish tendencies. So that it works. Then we have one of the biggest disappointments I've ever read, A False Start by Elsie Silver. Least favorite Elsie Silver book I've ever read. I rated this a 1.5. This is the final book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. This book is age gap. I can do an age gap. I have no issues with age gap until you make it creepy. This age gap wasn't even creepy, like, in terms of, like, she was fully an adult, he was fully an adult. There was no issues, like, technically with the age thing. However, if you're gonna talk about, like, always, like, oh, it's so creepy, like, I'm so much older than her. If you're gonna make it creepy, it will be creepy. It will read creepy if you make it a point to be creepy. Like, when they were together and, like, actually doing stuff together, like, doing stuff, you know, he kept thinking about how creepy it was. I was like, okay, like, if you didn't make it a big deal, it wouldn't be a big deal. Like, you're making it a big deal for no reason. Second issue I have with this book, the FMC had this issue, like personal issue, where she was like, men only ever want me for my body. Valid, girl, valid. But then the MMC only wanted her for her body. Like, I swear to God, every time we were in his POV, the only thing he was thinking of or her boobs or her ass. It could have been glazed over if we had not made it a point to be like, the FMC really doesn't like when men only want her for her body. And then you get into his POV and like, that's all he's thinking about. And also he was just a complete ick of a human. Like, why could he not do anything for himself? You're a grown-ass man. And then like the last 10% of this book, we had this weird side plot because everything else was resolved and we needed like a third act conflict. Like, we needed a reason for them not to be able to be together. Next, I actually read one of my favorite books of the year, 5 stars, Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke. I love this book for many reasons. I'm gonna keep it brief. I love a cult. I love religious trauma in a book. I love delusion. Like, I like all of the elements of this book and it was done well. One of my favorite books ever is Educated by Tara Westover. If you like this book, read Educated because very similar. It just was like a culmination of all my favorite topics. You've probably heard the blurb a million times, but it's this trad wife influencer, but then she actually gets transported back to the 1800s, 1850s, and has to actually trad wife. And then she hits the fan. Time of Your Life by Jessa Hastings. This is the next book. I rated this a 4 stars. I kind of conflict with my own rating because like I genuinely hated every single character in this book. Was so anxious and so worried for these people the whole time that I had to rate it highly because I was like, this brought out so much emotion in me that how can I not rate it highly? Like, it did what it was supposed to do. I cared enough for these characters to have the feelings about them and I wanted to keep reading. Like, I was addicted. So tell me how Jessa can do that. While I didn't like my time in this book, she did what she needed to do. She had me addicted. She had me caring about what happened to these characters even though I didn't like them. And I was feeling all the emotions. I felt anxious for them. I felt scared for them. I wanted them to win, but I also was like, how are you getting to these like conclusions? What's going on? So I really think it did what it needed to do. It brought out the feelings. This is about our MMC who's a really, really big rock star. Like, really, really big rock star. And our FMC who is like the world's top model. And not in the sense of like the TV show. Like, she is that girl. And they fall in love. They find each other. They fall in love at a bar. They should not be in love. They should not be in love. Do I want to continue the series because as much as I want to know what happens, do I want to go through that trauma just for them to be endgame when I'm like, you guys don't need to be within a 2-mile radius of each other? Like, separate. I don't know. I'm like super conflicted about this and Jessa books in general because I'm like, I don't know how I feel about what this makes me feel. But it makes me feel, so I cannot fault it for that. Then we have Rook and Rebel by Kate Crew. This is a first book in a series. I don't think I'm going to continue the series because I did rate this a 2 stars. It's like supposed to be like Lights Out by Navessa Allen because when I read Lights Out, I was like, let me do some TikTok research. And I was like, what should I read after I finish Lights Out by Navessa Allen? What gives the same vibes? It always came up. And so I eventually acquired it on audio and I read it that way while I was abroad. I think this is my sign to stop trying for a book that is like Lights Out by Navessa Allen because I don't think I'll find one. And so I was going in with those expectations and I think it just fell flat. It just like wasn't memorable. It wasn't funny. The thing I really like about Lights Out is how funny it is. This book just wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. I didn't care. The girl's name was Reagan, which is my name. I remember that. And then her dad is like this really rich guy who owns a security company. He's like kind of a our MMC wants to go after him, gets close to his daughter to kind of like Next we have Enigma by Runix. I'm rereading this 100%. The vibes absolutely peak. This is like a dark academia story romance. It's like a romance mainly. This is another situation in which I read this too fast to remember anything. Like, I was absolutely devouring it. 4.5 stars. I adored it. Do I remember it? No, because I was not savoring it. I have this problem often because I'm so addicted to a book and I'm loving it and I'm like, this is 5 stars. I love this. And then I read it in like 24 hours and I'm like, shit, I don't remember anything. I was going too fast. So I'm gonna reread this in October when the vibes are absolutely peak because I read this when it was like 90 degrees out. I love the romance. There was a mystery, like murder side plot that I adored. Our FMC was going to school for forensics and she was like really smart and liked to do forensics. So 4.5 stars. Would recommend this if it's October. Of Faith and Flame. Unfortunately, this is 1.5 stars. This is an indie author and an author local to North Carolina, actually. I met her at a book fair. I was like, oh, I'm going to love this book. There's like witches and werewolves and vampires and all this stuff. And it sounded so good and the premise was so good. The writing was just not good. I feel like it was very repetitive. So the situation was like our MMC and our FMC were supposed to get married because of this prophecy, but our FMC lost her magic. She's like, I can't do this anymore, runs away. And then our MMC's like, we gotta fulfill this prophecy. Let me go find her. They've never met. Really good situation, right? Every time we bring it up, even when we're in the last 20 pages of the book, we bring up the situation in which we already know all of these details. Every time we bring up their romantic situation, we've got to do a recap about why they're in the position they're in, how they got here. I lost my powers and he ran after it. Again and again, over and over. Every time we bring up the romantic connection, we have to recap it. I'm like, girl, I get it. A little bit, I think that this author needs to trust her readers a little bit more. Give us more credit. You need to trust the reader a little bit more to be like, I don't need to give you a recap of political situation, the romantic situation, the murder plot situation every time we bring it up. Like, I don't need a recap. And I think that happened with every aspect of the book. It was repetitive. We had to continuously retell everything we had already known because it felt like we were just not trusted as the reader. Like, she didn't trust us to remember the key details of the plot. And it's not like a vague mention this one time small detail. It was like the mainstays of the plot were repeated constantly. And then also I felt like in terms of the world building, the author really wanted this world to be so complicated. Didn't have the writing skill to make it complicated because every time we needed a plot device, we needed something to happen to further something else, we would throw in this random mythical creature that had no point and no bearing on the world, like completely made up, just random. I'm like, okay, so I guess everything under the sun exists in this world. Like, there's no rhyme or reason. We didn't have any explanation, just random mythical creature. They fight it, it dies, never comes up again. And it felt like that was just done constantly for the plot as a plot device, number one. Number two, to make it feel like this world was very large and complex, which I understand, but also, again, if you're gonna have an adult fantasy book, there needs to be some rhyme or reason to the world. There has to be a why. Like, things can exist and you don't know why they exist, but I need to know why they're significant to the story in this plot. You can't just throw something in there because it's a fantasy world. Like, there has to also be some scope in the world kind of situation. I will keep an eye on this author's other things that come out in the future because I think with more practice, she could be really good because the ideas are so creative. The ideas are there. It's the execution that's not there. The Takeover by T.L. Swan. This is probably one of my least favorite romances I've ever read. 1 star. We're gonna make this really quick. It's a romance. We have our MMC. He's a really high power CEO and he does motivational speaking and he's really rich and owns a company. And then our FMC also owns a company. She's not really rich because her company is failing. She has some grief, like things going on because her husband died. So trigger warning for that. The issues I had with this book, our MMC was quite misogynistic and so was our FMC. Our MMC called our FMC a bitch multiple times. That is something that I can't really get behind. And then our FMC butt shamed women, other women, and herself repeatedly. You can't do that in a romance book because I no longer root for any of the characters if they're just mean. Also, another pet peeve of mine when an MMC in a romance book feels like a man baby. Like, you are a grown adult man, you can't do your laundry, you can't cook for yourself. If there's any of that, I'm like, this woman is gonna be your mother. It felt real. It felt too real a little bit. Like, I could pick up a man off the street right now who didn't know how to do his laundry, didn't want to take care of kids, didn't want to cook, and wanted to be a high power CEO. Like, this could be the real world. And that is not what I want in a romance book. The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. This is a book that I read on vacation. It is in this vlog right here, which is my vacation reading vlog. Actually, the next 2 books are, so we're going to talk about them together because I have a lot more in-depth thoughts about them in that vlog if you want to watch it. So this is The Correspondent and I Have Never Known Them by Jacqueline Hartman. 2 books I read on the beach are both quite introspective. This is about an old woman named Sybil Van Antwerp and she writes letters to people and this is the story of her life through letters. She's this crotchety old woman. Wow, everyone's living their life for the first time kind of a book. This is a dystopian about 40 women who are trapped in an underground bunker. And our FMC, like our main character, she is one of these women, but she's the youngest and she has no memory of the outside world. And then one day the guards disappear and they're all let out into the world and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Why are they where they are? Both of these books I really enjoyed reading on the beach. Respectively, I rated them 4 stars and then 3.5 stars. Those are all the books I read in the last 2 months in April and May. I hope you enjoyed. This is a lot of books. Let me know if you like this style wrap up where we talk about more books in shorter amounts of time, or if you'd rather us have like a wrap up per month if you kind of care. Like, comment, and subscribe if you like bookish content. If you like my content, I would love to see you around more. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. This is the first video that I'm filming since we had 1,000. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I love you all. I hope I motivated you to read a book, even just a little bit, and I'll see you next Sunday or next Wednesday. Bye.